All rise. Henry County Superior Court is now in session. The Honorable Brian J. O'Mara presiding.
Good morning, everyone. Please be seated. Okay, we have all of our observers.
Yes, sir.
And is the state ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the bench ready? Okay, let's go ahead and start with the housekeeping.
At 6 o'clock this morning, we received records from Banana Republic from the state. The state sent us records of employment of Jennifer Rosenbaum, and they anticipate getting a certificate of authenticity at some point today. We are asking the court not to allow those records in because we do not have an opportunity to cross-examine anybody as to that. We tried to get the records and we were told, we subpoenaed the records and we were told the records were no longer protected. And that they do not have access to those, and they only keep them for the last 3 years. So we are asking that do not accept the certification and require them to put up a witness so that we have someone to prosecute.
Judge, if I can just give some background as to how we are where we're at today. Number one, the first time the state even heard about anything regarding Banana Republic was last Monday when Kimball testified. It was the defense who asked her questions about her employment and whether or not she was working on that day, and whether or not Ms. Rosenbaum was also working on that day. So we had no knowledge of this, so as far as any kind of late discovery, we would have no way of knowing before last Monday. We contacted Banana Republic, and while we were told initially that they didn't know if they had those things, we were told that we had to contact the area HR supervisor. My investigator went about doing that, and we received a response yesterday. And I think the email came through like yesterday at almost 8 o'clock p.m. At which time, when I checked my email this morning, I forwarded it to Ms. Mull, and my investigator is in the process of getting the business record certification. I don't believe that my investigator is here just yet. She may have more insight regarding the specifics of who she talked to and when she talked to and all that, greater than I. But that's kind of where we're at.
I'm reserve ruling if that's acceptable to the state and to the defense at this point.
Sure.
Is there anything else?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's go ahead and bring out the jury if everybody's ready. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you all had a nice weekend. We are ready to proceed, and so we're just going to jump right in.
State calls Alanna Hicks.
Ms. Young will swear you.
Can you please raise your right hand? You swear upon the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please lower your hand, and can you please state and spell your first and last name? You can have a seat.
Thank you. It's Alanna Hicks King, ALANNAHICKS-KING.
And Ms. Hicks King, how are you employed there?
I am employed with the Division of Family and Children's Services.
And is that also known as DFAC?
Yes.
And how long have you been employed with DFAC?
A long time. Been with the state now almost 25 years. With DFACs, probably at least around 12 years.
And in 2015, what position did you hold?
I was a field program specialist.
And what does that mean to be a field program specialist?
The field program specialists are the consultants. We're around the state, but each region has a certain number of field program specialists. But we usually may specialize in one area. Like my area is investigations and assessment. Some do foster care, and some do treatment. The roles have changed just a little bit, but we're still the consultants to the county offices, and I'm assigned to Region 4. So we have 12 counties, and Henry County is one of our offices that we cover.
And in 2015, did you become involved in the case involving Millie Place and Layla Daniel?
Yes, I was assigned to the investigation.
And when you were assigned, when you say assigned, who assigned you to the investigation?
My supervisor at that time, Brenda Moore, and the regional director.
And as the investigator that was assigned to the case, what were your duties?
My duty was to complete the investigation. The investigation started actually on 11/17, on November 17th, the date of Layla's death. I received the case, was assigned to the case on November 18th.
And once you were assigned the case on November the 18th, how do you start going about your investigation of the case?
We had a staffing when I was assigned to the case where they told me the details from the previous night of the death. And our SAG, Mr. Jack Overman, myself, two of the other supervisors that met response time on the case the night before, we all were able to meet with Ms. Rosenbaum and Mr. Rosenbaum and their attorneys at that time. And I was able to interview Millie on that date, had her undressed. I did not take pictures because I had received pictures, or pictures were taken the night before, but I did observe her marks and bruises that she had as well.
And this is on November the 18th?
Yes, the morning of November 18th, and we had an additional staffing of the case for them to brief me and bring me up to speed with all the information that they had received the night before.
Okay. So I want to talk about November the 18th. Did you speak with the defendants, Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum?
Very briefly. There was a very brief meeting. Millie was brought to the office because DFACS was requesting her clothing and some toys. But we were in a room that we normally use for conferences when we were meeting with families or meetings. And I was able to observe Mr. and Mrs. Rosenbaum at that time.
And you said that you spoke with Millie as well?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, did Millie tell you in regards to the incident?
She didn't bring up the incident. I asked her, if I could see her, if she could undress. And Miss Carr, the other supervisor, was in the room because she brought her to the office where I was. And I was asking her about the different bruises that she had and if she remembered how she received them, and she stated no. And then right before she pulled down when I asked her to pull down her panties, right before she pulled them down, she said, "I have a boo-boo." And I said, "Okay, well, can you show me your boo-boo?" And so then she pulled down her panties, and I was able to see the other marks that I notated in my record.
Was Millie able to give you any information as to how she received those injuries? I know she said, "I don't know." Did she tell you anything else?
There was one that she received, I can't remember if it was the arm or the leg, where she stated that she hurt herself in gymnastics, that she fell in gymnastics.
At that point, did you have any information as to her attending gymnastics?
No.
After speaking with Millie, what are the next steps that you take as part of your investigation?
We went back into a different room, received additional information where they were briefing me about all the details that they had received the night before. And we were calling to make sure she got a forensic set up, a forensic interview. And I think by the end of the week, we had the autopsy, and that's kind of when I started seeing and talking to people in the investigation.
Do you know when was Millie removed from the Rosenbaum's home that evening?
She was removed November 17th, yes.
Do you know where she went after she was removed from the defendant's home?
She went to another foster parent, I think of Miss Vasquez. I think she went to a different foster parent and then went back to Miss Lambert. Because by the time I got to Miss Lambert and Mr. Lambert's home, Millie was back because that was the day of the funeral. But she was back in their home at that time. Okay.
And you said your investigation didn't start until you got information from the autopsy.
No, the investigation starts as soon as you get assigned the case.
Okay.
But they were briefing me on all of the information and details from the previous day. The incident, as far as when the agency was made aware that there was a problem or that the hospital or the paramedics had been called regarding Layla. So it started from there, and they brought me all the way up to speed until that morning.
Okay. And that's November the 18th we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After the November the 18th staffing and briefing, what are the next steps that you take as part of your investigation?
To ensure that the next day, I want to say we have a representative at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta Dr. Greenbaum, normally in a situation like this, her team will do a forensic on the children, so we want to make sure we scheduled that. So I made some phone calls to try to ensure that we did take care of that. And in the meantime, I think I spoke to the coroner, because that's how I found out when the autopsy was going to take place. And I believe that I called the daycare centers, or at least one of the daycare centers, because I was trying to verify whether or not the girls were actually enrolled in daycare.
And when you talk, I want to talk about the daycare centers. What information did you have at that point in your investigation as to daycare attendants involving Millie Place and Layla Daniel?
The daycare center that I called, the first time
Response?
Judge, at this point, she's, I guess, talking about what she did as part of her investigation and what information she got in order to continue with her investigation.
Well, if the information is from a person who made a statement, sustain the objection.
What daycares did you call?
I think it was Ola, it was Bethany Church. But I spoke to the representative who stated that she was in.
And if you not telling me what anyone said to you, just who you called and who you reached out to, but not what information you received. So you said you called Ola Academy.
Yes.
And was there another daycare that you called?
There may have been one other, but I know I called Ola twice because of Millie's name. Okay. There was Millie Place. I used Millie Rosenbaum. And there was in her mother's last name, Clenending. So I know the first time I called, I can't remember the exact name. I think I said Millie Place. And then when I had the additional names later on in my investigation, I called back to make sure that she could check her records to see if Lily or Layla had ever been enrolled based on the names that I received from the investigation.
And you said you called another daycare. Which was that daycare?
I can't recall the name.
Looking at your report, would that help you to recall?
It may. It would be Ola Academy and Bethany Baptist Church.
Did you ever make a call to Turning Point in regards to daycare?
No.
Okay. Had you ever heard of Turning Point prior to me just saying Turning Point?
I mean, I've heard of Turning Point, but I didn't call anybody in Turning Point in the case at all.
As far as your investigation of the case, did Turning Point become one of the daycares that you needed to reach out to?
No.
You said you called the daycares. Anything else that you did as part of your investigation?
Everything in the investigation?
Yeah, what's the next steps that you took?
I attended the autopsy. I spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Lambert and their daughter.
I'm sorry. When do you recall speaking to Mr. and Mrs. Lambert?
It was around the 23rd, I think, because the autopsy was that Friday, I think, was November 20th.
And why did you speak with the Lamberts?
I spoke to the Lamberts because it was stated that in the brief.
Without telling me what anyone said to you, what was the purpose of you meeting and speaking with the Lamberts?
In the staffings, it was brought up that the Lamberts had the.
We're talking about, you're saying what happened in the staffing.
Without just, if not telling me what someone said, did part of your investigation lead you to speak with the Lamberts?
Yes.
Okay. And did you speak with the Lamberts on more than one occasion?
No.
Okay. And after speaking with the Lamberts, what is the next steps that you took as part of your investigation?
I went to the gym.
Okay. And what gym did you go to?
Gym Tech for Kids.
Okay. And do you recall when you went to Gym Tech for Kids?
I spoke to Miss Matheson, the director.
Okay. And did you do anything else while you were at Gym Tech?
I took pictures of the gym as far as where the children interact. The left side of the gym was for the bigger kids, and you could tell on the right-hand side that was for the smaller children, where Millie and Millie's class would participate on the right-hand side.
After going out to Gym Tech, did you do anything else?
I asked them if they had any incident reports regarding Layla or Millie ever being hurt, and they did not have any. And I asked about attendance, and she gave me the attendance records, which I added in to my record.
Did you review that attendance record?
Yes, I did.
Did you find that Layla Daniel attended Gym Tech at all?
No.
And after visiting your where else did your investigation lead you, or other calls that you needed to make as part of your investigation?
I spoke to a former foster care worker, a former foster care parent, Ms. Brown, who had the girls prior to them being placed with Ms. Lambert.
And let me ask you this, prior to starting your investigation, at any point do you review the history of Millie Place and Layla Daniel to determine the reason that they were in care?
The history was provided to me during our formal staffing of the case.
Okay. At any point during your staffing of the case or your review of their history, did you review or learn anything about physical abuse for the reason them being in care?
I can't recall if it was physical abuse. I know that drug use regarding their mother was a part of the case.
Okay. And after speaking with Ms. Brown, what did you do next as part of your investigation?
Well, I spoke to Ms. Brown. I spoke to Mr. and Ms. Lambert, their daughter. I spoke to Ms. Battle and another person on her team, a Ms. Irk. Spoke to both of them because I was informed that Ms. Rosenbaum was an intern with them. And to ask them any questions that I asked them questions regarding their observations of her.
What's the next thing that you did as part of your investigation?
Attended the autopsy, spoke to the foster parents, I also received, I went to Ms. Banks' house. Ms. Banks, Peggy Banks, is the great grandmother to Layla and Millie. And I went to her home to interview her and to receive information. And I went back out to her home a second time after I received a phone call from one of our state office representatives who stated...
Without telling me what anyone said, when you went back out the second time, what did you do?
I was going out because I was supposed to address a situation where there possibly was a hole in her backyard that Millie and Layla could have hurt themselves in a hole in Miss Banks' backyard. So I went back out to interview Miss Banks, and she lives in a senior community. They're like some townhomes, like a semicircle. So it's very flat. And I was able to go to the backyard through Miss Banks' sister, Kim, her baby sister Kim's room. Miss Banks' sister's bed blocks the sliding glass doors to the back, so she had to move her bed. I walked out, I took pictures of the backyard, and it's like tiled. And it goes, like if you're standing, there are certain areas where if you go all the way out, you can look down to behind the other neighbor's home. So it's very flat. If I had to estimate in feet, I think I wrote it in my documentation, it's not a large space at all, but it's very flat back in that area.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibits 390 through 396, if you can look at those.
And this is also the front yard, which kind of shows some of the community.
And first, do you recognize States 390 through 396?
Yes, these are the photos that I took when I went to Miss Banks' house, and it shows the front yard and the backyard.
Do they accurately depict what you observed when you went out there that day?
Yes, they do.
The state would ask that States Exhibits 390 through 396 be admitted into evidence.
Admitted 390 through 396.
They may be published.
Yes.
And this is States 390. If you can tell me what we're looking at here in States 390.
That's the front yard. That's at Miss Banks' front door, looking out of her front door.
Did you observe any holes in the front yard of Miss Banks' home?
No, I did not.
And this is states 392. What are we looking at here in 392?
That's on the side of the house?
And did you observe any holes on the side of the house at Ms. Banks' home?
No.
And states number 395, what are we looking at here?
This is the backyard, and actually you can see the unit that's outside, and then the next unit is the neighbors. And that's what I was saying, as far as if you're the neighbor, you can walk out and just walk all the way around, because that is the paved area of what it looks like in all of the backyards.
And did you observe any holes in that paved area at all?
No,
What about up on the hill in this grassy area?
no, I didn't observe anything in the area where I could see. I didn't observe any holes or anything in that area.
And then states exhibit number 396.
This is the other side, so the the pictures that you just showed, that was, if I'm standing at the back door looking out, the first picture was to the left, and this is to the right.
And after speaking with Ms. Banks and taking photographs of her front and backyard, what else did you do as part of your investigation?
I asked her if she had any additional information. She could send it to me. I thanked her, thanked her for her cooperation. She shared that she was, her term, she herself, Ms. Banks, was a military brat, and that she mentioned that Ms. Rosenbaum told her she was in the military.
And if you cannot tell me what someone told you, just tell me the steps that you took
So
as
after
part
I
of
was
your investigation.
Okay. So after I was informed about Ms. Rosenbaum being in the military, I called National Guard and requested information. I was sent minimal information, but it was a certificate that stated that she was in the National Guard.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit number 389, which is a self-authenticating business record from the National Personal Records Center. States 389, we'd ask that it be admitted into evidence.
Admitted.
Yes, this is a copy of the certificate that was sent to me.
And according to this certificate, yes, what class did the defendant Jennifer Rosenbaum hold in the Army National Guard?
I can't recall that. Whatever it would, I didn't write
It's
down.
behind you. You can look behind you. It's clear enough for you to see.
Private first class.
And is this the discharge certificate?
This was the certificate that was sent to me.
Okay. And according to this certificate, when was she discharged?
May 2013, May 23rd, 2013.
At the end of your investigation, are you required to make a determination as to your findings?
Yes,
And what were your findings in this case?
we substantiated the case.
And what did you substantiate the case for?
Physical abuse and it was definitely physical abuse.
Okay. And if looking at it, would it help that
Yes.
to refresh your recollection?
One second. Withdraw.
Substantiated for,
And I asked if you could just look at it, don't read it,
Okay.
and when you're done reading it, if you could then look up.
It's like that impose an infection that you are invading the province of the jury by letting the defects testify as to whether it's been substantiated or not, and so I would object to that. And that's the motion to strike.
Well, Judge, I think that those are two different things. The jury is here to decide the criminal charges as to whether or not these defendants are guilty. DFAS can talk about the findings of their investigation. That has nothing to do with the jury has to do ultimately.
Why do we have any case file at this point?
I do not, at this moment, Your Honor, I did not bring that up.
I do not, Judge, because it's not. I'm not asking them for their findings for the criminal charges, just as to DFAS.
I'll allow it.
Ma'am, what were your findings?
for Layla Daniel, we substantiated for neglect and physical abuse, and for Millie place at that time. We substantiated for physical abuse.
Against two?
Mr. and Mrs. Rosenbaum.
Nothing further.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Hicks, my name's Kareem Mall, and I just have a few questions for you. In your investigation of the front yard, can you tell us exactly where you went here,
That's at the front door.
and where did you physically go yourself?
This area, my car is actually one of the two cars that's parked in the back.
You did not go into this area, did you?
No, I had to walk, her driveway is right there, so I had to walk to the driveway in order to get to the front door. So that is just her yard between the white car and the red car.
So you did not go into this area at all? You did not walk into this area? You stayed on the sidewalk, isn't that true?
On the cement, yes.
You did not go up into this area and check it for holes, did you?
No, I walked to the back of the paved area.
Okay, so you stayed on the paved area,
Yes,
but you did not go and examine the backyard for any holes?
no.
On the State's Exhibit 396, did you go up into this area here, or did you stay on the paved area?
Stayed on the paved area.
So you did not go up into this hilly area,
No,
and you did not go beyond the fence, did you?
no.
There's an opening, the fence just ends here, right? There's an opening that somebody can get through, correct?
I can't answer that.
You don't know.
I can't answer that because the way the fence is there, I mean, that's how it looked on the day I went out there. I didn't see any openings where a person could get through,
But you didn't go up there, did
but
you?
I did not go up there.
Now, Ms. Hicks-King, you and Ms. Arno Carr interviewed Millie, correct?
Yes,
And you knew that children should be interviewed by forensic interviewers, correct?
yes,
And are you or Ms. Arno Carr forensic interviewers?
no,
But nevertheless, you went ahead and asked Millie questions, correct?
yes,
And you did that prior to her going into a forensic interview, correct?
yes,
And in fact, you scheduled that interview for the next day,
the interview was already scheduled.
okay? But somebody scheduled it, right?
Yes,
And isn't it true that Millie told you her elbow hit her knee?
yes,
So it wasn't a matter of she not knowing. She said that she didn't know how she got some of the bruises, but she got some of the bruises, but she knew her elbow hit her knee, correct?
yes,
And you spoke to Miss Samantha White, correct?
yes,
She answered all your questions, right?
yes,
She did not have legal representation when she was talking to you, did she?
no,
And she told you that Millie was a rough girl and she played hard, correct?
yes,
And she told you the girls could be aggressive towards each other.
she said that they could be aggressive.
And she also told you there was plenty of food in the house. Isn't that true?
She did.
And you met with the Lamberts, correct?
Yes,
And did you discuss with Miss Lambert, Miss Banks at all?
Miss Lambert brought Miss Banks up.
And said what?
She stated that she,
object to hearsay.
Response?
Withdraw. Now, did you at any point in your investigation find any document or talk to anybody that suggested that Tessa Daniel asked for her child to be removed, her children to be removed from the Rosenbaum home?
state the question again?
In your investigation, isn't it true that you did not find any evidence that Tessa Daniels asked for her children to be removed from the Rosenbaum home?
No,
You didn't find any evidence of that, correct?
no.
Am I correct?
It was not verified.
You did not find any information.
Correct. I did not find verification that it was that Tessa had made any.
Now, you asked Miss Banks to tell you if anything further came up, correct?
Yes,
Did she ever call you and tell you that Millie said that Joseph Rosenbaum beat her in the back?
no, she did not.
Did she ever call you and tell you that Jennifer Rosenbaum was drunk, yanking the children up and down the stairs?
No, she,
object, Your Honor, because I think this calls for hearsay. She's asking what Ms. Banks said to her.
It's impeachment, Your Honor. Whether she has heard, whether Miss Banks said that to anybody. Miss Lambert, I'm sorry, whether Miss Lambert said that. Miss Lambert claims that happened, and I'm just asking this witness
Ms. Lambert claims that what happened?
that Jennifer was drunk and yanking the children up and down the stairs, and that Joseph Rosenbaum beat Millie on the back. And that was said by Miss Lambert to have been what Millie said. And I'm now asking whether Miss Banks, she testified on direct, but Miss Lambert was directed to call her with any further information. Did she call you with any further information?
Let's have the jury step out, please.